melhor que esse aqui? É teimoso esse, mas não tem som no tipo.
Passa aqui, né? Sai daqui, vem aqui, ó.
Os dois estavam...
Seria interessante
aí
colocar no banco de novo ou não?
At the age of 24, he invented the induction motor. 4 years later, he traveled to New York to interview with his hero, Thomas Edison. This meeting did not go well, but Edison still hired Tesla. After a few months, Tesla resigned in disgust and left to work on his system of alternating current. 10 years later, Tesla passed away impoverished in a seedy New York hotel room. After he died, the US government confiscated his possessions. His notes were held by the Office of Alien Papers and eventually shipped to Yugoslavia. Or were they? We know Tesla attempted to create death rays, wireless energy, and powerful gyroscopes. But there's one thing we don't know. What was in those notes? Here's where it gets crazy. Thousands of people believe the US government suppressed Tesla's technology. Take the story of the Tesla oscillator, a small device that can allegedly simulate earthquakes. Consider also the death ray. In an interview with the New York Times, Tesla stated he'd invented a giant death beam that would end war because it was simply too easy for countries to destroy each other. But his strangest alleged invention was a worldwide free electricity system. With funding from J.P. Morgan, Tesla built a gigantic tower in Shoreham, New York, and named it Wardenclyffe. J.P. Morgan hoped the Wardenclyffe Tower could provide wireless communication across the world. However, Tesla had other plans. The inventor reportedly wanted to build an energy system that used Earth as a conductor. If the project worked, anyone could have electricity by simply sticking a rod into the ground. Unfortunately, free electricity is not profitable, and this system could be incredibly dangerous for the global elite because it could profoundly change the energy industry. Imagine how different the world would be if society didn't need oil or coal to function. Could the current world powers maintain control? Many historians believe Westinghouse and Morgan refused to continue to fund the Wardenclyffe project because they grew tired of the great expense. But what if they banded together to blackball Tesla? Financially, it makes sense. The mark of most great inventions is that they fundamentally change the society in which they exist, and the people at the top of the social structure have more to gain by reinforcing the status quo. But Tesla's technology didn't necessarily disappear. Some theorists believe the government continues to use Tesla's research in places like the HARP facility of Alaska. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, this program investigates ionospheric phenomena, and the government claims it is purely for research. There's no way to know for sure what Tesla's notes contained, and if the US government really has used Tesla's designs, they've done a wonderful job hiding their tracks. Both skeptics and conspiracy theorists agree that the US government held Tesla's notes before eventually sending them back to Europe. But what happened in between? We may never know. We do know that the US has top-secret experimental compounds throughout the world, and the US has a history of secretly developing technology before revealing it to the public.
The Secrets Hidden in the Pyramids of Egypt. Part 1. The idea that civilizations progress from a primitive state to a more advanced one is a fallacy that evolutionists try to apply to history. If one abandons evolutionist nonsense and prejudice and looks at the historical references and findings with an unbiased mind, what one encounters is civilizations that used highly advanced technologies. Remains left from ancient Egypt, the Mayans, and the Sumerians indicate the branches of science such as electricity, electrochemistry, electromagnetics, metallurgy, hydrogeology, medicine, chemistry, and physics were used to a considerable extent. Electricity was efficiently generated and widely utilized in ancient Egypt. The Baghdad battery and the first arc lights were used at that time. But was electrical generation limited to these in ancient Egypt? A careful examination of Egyptian history immediately reveals the sophistication in perfect illumination. No soot has been found in the corridors of the pyramids or the tombs of the kings, because these areas were lit using electricity. Relief carvings show that the Egyptians used handheld torches powered by cable-free power sources. The arc lamp used in the lighthouse of Alexandria is further proof that electricity was used in ancient Egypt. The energy required to power the lighthouse of Alexandria for 24 hours a day could only have been supplied by a regular electrical source. The pyramids of Egypt were giant power plants generating electricity. 1. The outer casing of the Great Pyramid was covered with white tufa limestone, so tightly built that not even a razor blade could fit between the blocks. The white tufa limestone does not contain magnesium and has high insulating properties. This insulation property prevented the electricity inside the pyramid from being released without control. 2. The stone blocks used inside the pyramid were made of another form of limestone, containing crystal and a small amount of metal, which allow for maximum power transmission. The shafts inside the pyramid were lined with granite. Granite is a slightly radioactive substance and permits the ionization of the air inside these shafts. When we look at an insulated electric cable, we see that conductive and insulation materials are used in the same way as in the pyramids. 3. The conductive and insulating properties of the pyramid are an example of flawless engineering. However, a source of energy is needed for electricity generation. The Giza plateau where the pyramids stand is full of underground water channels. The pyramids rise above the limestone layers, the spaces between them being full of water. These special layers of rock that transmit electricity upward as they carry underground water to the surface are known as aquifers. The high volume flow of the River Nile that passes through these aquifers produces an electric current. This is known as physioelectricity. The pyramids' underground chambers are granite conductors built within the rock charged with physioelectricity. This electric current is conducted directly to the upper part of the pyramid's granite, covered subterranean chambers. Granite is a very good conductor of electricity. The electromagnetic field that forms at the bottom of the pyramid is transmitted in concentrated form to the upper layers of the pyramid. On the top of the pyramid there was a gold capstone, gold being an excellent conductor of electricity. This section is no longer there in our day. This means the top of the pyramid has lost its structure of flawless geometry. This gold capstone facilitated a conductive path for the transfer of negative ions to the ionosphere. This way, a current was generated. How does it serve to move the electromagnetic field on the ground with the help of an aquifer? An identical form of this technology, employed in Egypt 5,000 years ago, was used by Nikola Tesla, an inventor of electric technology in the early 1900s, in a tower he constructed in the United States of America. Tesla, the inventor of such fundamental electric technology as the alternating current, electric engine, radio, the laser, and radar, was successful in simultaneously transmitting sound and pictures between continents in the Wardenclyffe tower he built between 1901 and 1917. He used an external source of electricity for this, and even applied wireless power transmission technology. Tesla had also built his tower above an aquifer and discharged the negative ions from the aquifer to the tower. The electromagnetic technology used in Tesla's famous tower is identical to the electromagnetic field set up in the construction of the pyramids. Both systems generate negative ions and transmit them without the need for electric cables. So for what purpose did the Egyptians use electricity? Relief carvings clearly show that the Egyptians used hand-held bulb-type lamps powered by a cable-free electric source. These bulbs are reminiscent of Nikola Tesla's descriptions to show that his alternating current was safe. At the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, Tesla transmitted alternating electric current through his body to light a bulb he held in his hand without using electric cables. This relief carving shows a wireless antenna. The Egyptians used the antenna and cable-free energy for wireless communication. In the relief on the left is a carved transmitter with a receiver on the left. This evidence indicates that the Egyptians used free wireless energy for communication purposes. This relief carving shows a yarn manufacturing facility. The yarn Egyptians used for their fabrics at that time were as fine as those manufactured by machinery today. The Egyptians also used electric power in their weaving plants. It was seen that many gold objects which have remained from ancient Egypt were in fact very finely gold-plated. Such perfect gold plating as in these pieces requires the use of electricity. The total electromagnetic measurement made around the Great Pyramid is identical to that made during a thunderstorm with lightning. There's a powerful electromagnetic field around the Great Pyramid. This may be observed through a simple experiment when standing at the top of the pyramid with a bottle wrapped in a damp cloth. Sparks fly away from the bottle as if one were on top of a high-voltage bobbin. The pyramids were not used as tombs. The pyramids have always been interpreted as the tombs of the pharaohs, but in fact no inscriptions of any kind appear in the corridors of the Great Pyramid. This suggests a functional building rather than a mausoleum. An empty stone chest was found on the central axis of the pyramid that archaeologists call the King's Chamber. They claimed that this contained the coffin of the pharaoh, but that since this had been stolen, it was now empty. But the examination of the dimensions of the stone chest and the special location in which it was installed reveals a different state of affairs. That point is just where the missing part of the pyramid's conductive structure and whole design suggest it should be. If a superconductive material was installed here, the pyramid could manufacture enough electricity for all of Egypt.
Turn the machine on.
Denny Klein fires up his hot new invention. His machine emits a flame that feels only slightly warm to the touch. But watch what happens when he touches anything else.
Instantaneously, I can burn a hole right down through the center of that brick.
The flame instantly turns hotter than the surface of the sun. Heat so intense it takes only seconds to literally burn a hole through charcoal. 3 seconds turns a brass ball to glowing liquid metal. Tungsten lights up like a sparkler. Steel, lead, and other metals slices on contact. Yet the tip of the welder stays cool to the touch.
No other gas will do this.
Denny Klein uses an alternative fuel source once thought impossible. He says people still have trouble believing him when he reveals his liquid fuel.
Water. Take water and electricity, and we break it down through our very unique electrolysis process.
Klein has just patented his process of converting H2O to HHO, producing a gas that combines the atomic power of hydrogen with the chemical stability of water.
It turns right back to water. You can see the water running off of this.
Klein originally designed his water-burning engine for cutting metal. He thought his invention would replace volatile acetylene in welding factories. Then one day, as he drove to his laboratory in Clearwater, he thought of another way to burn his HHO gas.
On a 100-mile trip, we use about 4 ounces of water.
Klein says his prototype 1994 Ford Escort can travel exclusively on water, though he currently has it rigged to run as a water and gasoline hybrid.
Simply speaking, it can change the world by reducing our dependence on fossil fuels.
These are equivalent to our...
Pete Dominici is helping Klein take his hydrogen technology patents from a 2-room office in Clearwater to consumer markets around the world.
You know what? Microsoft came out of nowhere, came out of the garage. Why not hydrogen technologies?
The duo is already in negotiations with one U.S. automaker and the U.S. government. Their plans have grown from basic welding with water to powering the entire world from the safest and cleanest fuel on Earth.
Recent months, there has been a push to legalize hemp farming in America. Some say it's clean and a sustainable crop that's easy to grow and will help the ailing economy. Others say legalizing it will only complicate the country's current war on drugs. KUSI's Bridget Naso has more on the controversial crop in a 2-part special report, Hemp in America.
You know, the first law of Jamestown was it was illegal not to grow hemp on your farm. You know, it was that important of a crop.
Used to make clothing, paper products, and even covered wagons. Bronner says hemp is still used today by manufacturers of German cars. So what happened to hemp in America? The stigma began in the 1930s at the end of Prohibition. The government and the media, says Bronner, campaigned to scare the public, and competitive industries fed the fuel to get rid of hemp.
In this country, industrial hemp was widely cultivated since America's first settlers arrived in the early 1600s. In fact, even our founding fathers acknowledged hemp's enormous benefits. George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson all grew hemp on their private farms. And Jefferson was even quoted once as saying hemp is one of the greatest important substances of our nation. The Declaration of Independence itself was even drafted on paper derived from hemp. So what happened? How did one of the most versatile and adaptable species of crops in the world also become one of the most politically polarizing agricultural resources? Well, in the early 20th century, the plant became labeled a threat so dangerous that it should be wiped out. But it wasn't dangerous to anyone or anything except the industries that it could phase out of existence. So what did the establishment do to ensure their allegiance to the very industries they serve? Well, they did what they do best. They lied and smeared hemp through a propaganda campaign that associated the plant with marijuana. And in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act redefined hemp as a narcotic, which required farmers to obtain a special tax stamp to grow the crop. By 1970, the Controlled Substances Act made growing the crop without a DEA-issued permit strictly illegal. Because of the government crackdown on the crop, it has a negative association. And at this point, you still might be confused because of years of being brainwashed to think that hemp is exactly the same as marijuana, or that its close association with it must classify it as a drug. But this couldn't be farther from the truth. Just check out the Congressional Research Service report on hemp that states, quote, although marijuana is also a variety of cannabis, it is genetically distinct from industrial hemp, and it is further distinguished by its use and chemical makeup. So, hemp is genetically distinct from the drug, marijuana. In fact, if you smoked an entire garbage bag full of hemp, you wouldn't get high. Yet the plant remains illegal under U.S. federal law. And like I said before, not because it's a danger to people, but because it's a danger to corporations. In the early 20th century, hemp competed heavily with the cotton and paper industry. Because paper made from trees had to compete against environmentally friendly hemp products, the paper industry was at risk to suffer. So William Hearst, a New York State congressman and one of the biggest newspaper publishers in America, launched a campaign against hemp. He used his publication to smear the public's perception of the crop, which at the same time was threatening his successful paper company. In fact, this very campaign is where the term yellow journalism derived from. But this was in the 1920s. How is the propaganda still working today? Because the threat hemp poses isn't limited to paper. Reviving the industry could potentially devastate the profits of huge corporations that manufacture lumber, fossil fuels, steel, alcohol, and even food, among many other things, including this. In 1941, Henry Ford even built a car made almost entirely from hemp. The frame of the car was 12 times lighter than steel and 10 times stronger. Not only that, but the car was powered by hemp seed oil. Do I even have to explain the threat that this technology would pose to giant oil companies? Processed hemp also creates one of the strongest fibers we know of, providing all natural materials to build homes, ships, trains, planes, and automobiles, and practically indestructible clothing. Furthermore, hemp seed oil can be made into lotions and skin creams. The practical applications for this plant are limitless, and the reason it remains illegal is simple. It's just one giant push to preserve the profits of corporations that poison our planet, destroy our forests, and bankrupt the world. But this all could change if recent efforts in Kentucky are any indication, and if moves by a few key members in the U.S. Senate succeed, hemp could soon be removed from the government's list of Schedule I controlled substances. The hemp industry could very well be revived back to being America's #1 cash crop. And that's one step closer to succeeding against a model of profit, greed, and control that sadly defines this country today.
This is a Lotus Eco Elise. It's a high-performance sports car.
The magic ingredient is hemp. It's in the body panels, it's in the rear spoiler, and it's also been used in the manufacture of the seats.
Lee, using hemp matting in the panelling of cars seems a pretty unusual thing to do. Where did that idea come from?
Well, basically what we wanted to do here is actually reduce the carbon footprint of the car. We used hemp instead of fiberglass because basically it's grown locally to us, and it's a strong material. And as you can see, the effect that it's had on the panels, it's a beautiful material to look at. But what we've done with the Eco Elise is to actually look at the production stage, so looking at all the materials that go into the build of the car, which normally get forgotten about, really. And obviously the car is built locally, it's built in the countryside.
So this is our technical fibre. Yeah, we take the coarse material and we refine it. We open up the fibres, we clean it up, and this is used in the automotive industry to make things like this, car door panels. And then it can also be used to make insulation materials, and this is insulation material made from hemp fibre. And it has similar thermal properties to the normal products on the market.
And what's in this bag over there?
This is shiv. This is the woody core of the plant. This is used as animal bedding, and when mixed with lime is used in the construction industry.
A mix of lime and hemp packed around a timber frame can quickly be used to form a wall with high thermal properties.
How quickly can you use it? Is it easy to use? Is it versatile?
Yep, it's very simple to use, very versatile. It takes about 2 or 3 hours to learn how to use it. You don't need any high levels of skill, and it's possible to build walls very quickly. The section we're going to see here has just taken a few minutes, but you'd be talking about building a wall full height from ground to roof if you could mix it fast enough in a day, and you get a house built in maybe 2 or 3 days at the moment.
In the moment of truth. Well, there we have it. And how does it compare in the cost?
Well, a wall like this, 300 millimetres thick, is pretty identical in cost to a brick and block wall. So 300 millimetres like this gives you a wall which creates a building that needs virtually no heating or cooling.